Asked in August by Bloomberg News what the Republicans would do in power should they return this election cycle, Mitch McConnell refused to answer. He said he didn't want to scoop himself. In our fourth story, a week and a day before the Americans vote in the midterm elections, Leader McConnell has finally laid out his party's blueprint for the next 2 years. The plan for 2011 and 2012 is to make sure President Obama does not win a second term starting in 2013. And that's it. The president and McConnell were each interviewed for the latest edition of National Journal. President Obama telling the magazine that he is hopeful for bipartisanship efforts on things like education and infrastructure in the upcoming term, but he isn't banking on it, quoting, "It is going to be important for Democrats to have a proper and appropriate sense of humility about what we can accomplish in the absence of Republican cooperation." McConnell, in his interview, pretty much assured there would be no such cooperation to worry about. The National Journal's Major Garrett writing that McConnell was intent on not repeating the mistakes of the Gingrich-Dole Congress following Republican gains in 1994. McConnell saying Republican overpromising and the government shutdown led to Bill Clinton's second term. The Kentucky senator's plan beyond next Tuesday, quote, "We need to be honest with the public." Am I reading that right? "We need to be honest with the public. This election is about them, not us. And we need to treat this election as the first step in retaking the government. We need to say to everyone on Election Day, those of you who help make this a good day, you need to go out and help us finish the job." But what is the job? Adding jobs, entitlement reform, extending the Bush tax cuts? Try none of the above, according to McConnell, for the next 2 years, quote, "The single most important thing we want to achieve is for President Obama to be a one-term president." Again, the single most important thing we want to achieve is for President Obama to be a one-term president. McConnell's office today tried to walk that quote back, saying that defeating the president is their top political goal, even though McConnell had also told the National Journal, quote, "Our single biggest political goal is to give our nominee for president the maximum opportunity to be successful." Bottom line, for the next 2 years, the Republican leader has admitted that the bar for support on legislation is set at, will it hurt President Obama, and might it help the Republican presidential nominee in 2012? Snooky. Let's bring in Gene Robinson, associate editor, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist at the Washington Post, MSNBC political analyst, and now author of Disintegration, The Splintering of Black America. Good evening, Gene.
Evening, Keith.
Again, one more time, you can't hear this too often. The single most important thing we want to achieve is for President Obama to be a one-term president. And he talked about something else as his political primary goal. Is the only problem with this honesty here that it's been the Republicans' goal since November 2008, and it extended to delegitimizing a sitting president when that is an either-or with helping the country?
Well, I don't know if that's the only problem, Keith, because after all, we have massive unemployment. We're in 2 wars. We need to fix our education system, our infrastructure. We need to figure out what kind of economy we're going to have going forward, and you know, Social Security, entitlements. There are a few things on our plate. So it is a problem that this is the stated goal of the Republican caucus and perhaps the Republican majority in the U.S. Senate. But the honesty is refreshing, and as much as they try to walk it back, I think the record of the past 21 months speaks for itself.
The two-step plan here, which is promise nothing, then do nothing for 2 years, and the other half of it being handed off to a GOP presidential nominee, and, you know, good luck out there because the country's in ruins, presumably, by then. Are the nearly 10% of Americans who are not working right now going to vote for that kind of short-term 2-year plan of, you know, just a silent little non-moving blip line across the screen?
Oh, I really doubt it, and I think smart Republicans doubt it. Look at the past several elections. We've had wave elections. In 2006, the Republicans were basically swept out of Congress. In 2008, the rest of them were swept out. Now in 2010, it looks like they may be swept back in, but that is no guarantee that the wave isn't going to slosh the other way and in a hurry. And I think that perhaps the worst thing the Republicans could do would be look like a bunch of small-minded, short-term politicians who only want to win an election and who don't really care about the problems that people say they want solved.
Well, yeah, but that suggesting they should change from that is rather like the other quote from Mr. McConnell in this, which was, "I don't want the president to fail, I want him to change." What is he expecting him to change into? Ronald Reagan?
Well, that has been the Republican stance.
Yeah.
We're willing to cooperate with President Obama as long as he does everything we tell him and everything our way, and he doesn't, even though he's a Democrat, he doesn't do anything that's like in the Democratic Party platform, for example. So if there is more than a contradiction there, it's a recipe for a kind of gridlock that I really don't think the American public is going to take well to, and that, frankly, the president's ought to be able to exploit politically, if it comes to that, to his advantage.
Buried in all this, another contradiction about the hesitancy to repeat the government shutdown mistake. But it was, just a couple of weeks ago now that the Republican Tea Party Senate candidate in Alaska, Mr. Miller, claimed that Mitch McConnell and other Republicans were keeping the idea of the government shutdown on the table. Have they found that you do not need to do a shutdown to stop government from functioning, or are they just not going to tell anybody this until after the election?
Well, they've come pretty close to shutting down certainly a lot of presidential initiatives without an actual shutdown. This is going to be really interesting, though, because let's suppose that there are a lot of Joe Miller type Tea Partiers who come to Washington and who don't necessarily think that a government shutdown is such a bad idea, given that the Republican caucus is so full of arch conservatives already. The leadership may have trouble controlling that sort of impulse, which I think would, politically would be the White House's, kind of wet dream of what might happen. But they're certainly going to try not to do that. They saw what happened the last time. It's
fascinating if there is, in fact, a fissure between the Republican Party and the Tea Party candidates if they were to gain a majority in either house. MSNBC political analyst Eugene Robinson, as always. Great thanks, Gene.
Good to talk to you, Keith.